Are you tired of your valuable ideas and suggestions getting lost in the shuffle? Well, that is why I'm introducing Direct Suggest, the revolutionary digital suggestion box that puts your voice front and center. With Direct Suggest, you have the power to make a difference in your organization. Direct Suggest provides value to organizations in various industries worldwide, including notable brands like Comcast, TD Bank, and Nokia. And here's the best part. Direct Suggest only costs 50 cents per employee per month, making it an affordable solution for businesses of all sizes. Plus, they have an incredibly high ROI and savings potential with an average 33 times return on investment. The implementation process is also a breeze. Once committed, setting up Direct Suggest from start to finish can be completed in as quickly as a week or less. Don't let your ideas or your team's ideas go unnoticed. Visit directsuggest.com today and start by making a difference with Direct Suggest. Use the promo code HUMANHR for your extended 60-day free trial. Again, visit directsuggest.com to learn more, and remember to use promo code HUMANHR for an extended free trial. Direct Suggest, where your voice matters. Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Tracy Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. I'm really excited about our topic today because it's all about women receiving the leadership and mentoring that they need and the training in those areas that they need. And if you're not a woman, that is okay. Please make sure you continue to listen because everyone has a role to play in supporting everyone in the business, regardless of their gender. So today, to discuss this topic, I have Michelle Harris on the podcast, who is the host of her own podcast, Her Hype Squad, with Bosstrack. She founded Bosstrack in 2021 to provide women new to leadership roles with the development, support, and mentorship that she found lacking for new leaders. Often, little thought is given to the new tools and perspectives needed to lead, and as a result, new leaders are expected to just figure things out. Bosstrack was developed to fill in this gap. Michelle has over 25 years of leadership experience, with more than half of that time spent at an executive level. Her focus has always been on people, shaping her teams to produce results and grow in their roles. She has led her teams through financial reorganizations, acquisitions, and multi-billion-dollar private equity sales. She's excited to bring this opportunity, of course, to new women leaders. And while not working to empower women leaders, you can find Michelle in the water, in a photography studio, or at a new restaurant. She enjoys photography, scuba diving, free diving, enjoying food and wine, and exploring new places. She's also a mom of two and a wife of a former Marine. Michelle, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for having me. It's a little overwhelming hearing all that, but
Well, it
I'm so
is your
happy to be
life.
here with you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you are here. And I think it's always so funny, everyone's reaction to their own bios. But it is your life, and these are the things that you've done and enjoy doing. And that's very special.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, of
I'm
course.
excited I mean, like you said, this is my subject matter expertise. So I'm excited to dive in and talk about mentorship and leadership development. So,
Yes, me too. And why don't we do just that? We can dive right in, which is also a bit of a pun since you enjoy diving, which we might have to cover a little bit because I'm curious. I've never gone diving before, so I'd love to hear maybe a story on that. But tell us, the listeners really a little bit about what kind of sparked this realization for you that there was a gap in mentorship and leadership opportunities, especially for women.
well, I think the thing that did it for me was being in corporate myself. I have 25 years, over 25 years of experience, and during that time, I was there, throughout that time, looking for development opportunities for my own team and looking as I was growing new leaders or new people on my team into their leadership positions, looking for those opportunities where I could have them join a group, have a program, something long term that could help support them in that transition, in addition to, of course, what I was able to provide. But as you can imagine, especially in the environments I was in, private equity backed, high growth organizations, you're moving at high speed all the time. So finding those opportunities to give somebody the full attention that they needed, I was looking for that support. So I actually found a gap there. Like there were tons of opportunities for long-term development for executive women or executive leaders, but for new leaders, like people moving into their first manager or supervisor leadership role, they had, you could send somebody to a 1 or 2 day training, or you could have them take an online course, but there was really nothing long-term support and like to support them long term. So when I did finally leave corporate, that was my mission, was to provide that development to new leaders that I couldn't find myself.
That's amazing. And, you're absolutely right. There's definitely a need to focus on leadership and mentorship. This is a topic that has graced the podcast before, and I think it's especially important that we address why it's so important for women to receive this training and these opportunities as well. So, can you share with the listeners why you focus on women and why potentially this is a population of leaders and developing leaders who really need these resources?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably not a big surprise when you look at statistics. You look at who comes into the workforce, and it's pretty much male, female, 50-50. Then, with every rung in the ladder, you lose a certain percentage of representation. And that happens for quite a few different reasons. It could be just self-selection because they, ready to start a family. But a lot of it has to do with bias and, feeling unsupported and not feeling heard, and um, really wanting to find something else where they can feel that, and so they select to they elect to leave, or they just don't. They're not given those same opportunities to develop into that leadership role. So, I we have it out on our website. I reference every year the Women at Work. McKinsey puts out that study, and it's very eye opening to read, um, you know, the statistics about women and those reasons. So really, we focused on women so we could try to support and help and provide that mentorship, because it doesn't always have to be stay or leave. There are things that you can do to overcome that bias, or have that at least feel that support, so you can go into it and address it, or manage through that.
Right. I'm curious, do you have any of those statistics off the top of your head that you can share that maybe are more surprising or even insightful for those listening?
Yeah, so I think the latest study from 2022 was women come into the business world at 48%, and then at manager it's 40%. At VP level, it's 32%, and at C suite, it's 26%. And that's all women. But if you look at women of color separately than white women, only 5% of women of color are
Mm.
reaching the C suite level. So it's pretty dismal. And what I think companies don't necessarily realize is that there's a cost that comes with that. And, that turnover, it's not, it does. There's, it could be $70,000, depending on what kind of position you're replacing, to replace that person. And from not only from that standpoint, but when you do train a leader and provide that mentorship, and they have the tools that they need to succeed, I mean, you are going to contribute to your bottom line from them being more effective in their role.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, when you realize the downward trend, obviously you shared that, but when you really hear the numbers and you can see or you can visualize what that really looks like in terms of the trend downward, and then especially as you really hone in and focus on women of color, that it is dismal, and it's shocking, honestly, or at least it should be shocking, because we'd like to think that there would be, in 2023, at the time that we're recording this, that these numbers would be much stronger. So I guess my question then is, how do we make an impact on these numbers? Is it all focused on the mentorship and the leadership opportunities? Is it taking a chance to, or not even taking a chance, but really focusing on the roles before those leadership roles? Because really, I would imagine if women are leaving the workforce before they even have the opportunity to be in that 40% manager population, that already we're kind of missing the root cause of, or solving for that root cause, if they're already leaving the workforce.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think it's necessarily because they're leaving the workforce at that point. They're just not given the same, they may not be given the same promotional opportunities
Mm.
to move into that manager role. So I think what's happening is that they're staying at that associate level and not moving into that. And from there, they might decide that they're going to self-select out, or they stay and they just, they're not giving that opportunity.
Interesting. And are you seeing that certain industries doing a really good job of ensuring that there are women in these roles, or even opportunities, and these opportunities for training to be able to get them ready and developed for these roles? Are there industries that are doing a really poor job of this?
You know what? I apologize. I can't really answer that question. I can tell you from my podcast experience, when I interview women leaders that are in those director and VP roles, I mean, they're not seeing any much of a change at all, and it's been slow progress. And I talk to people across industries, and that's really the only experience that I can give, because
Hmm.
I don't know strictly by industry.
Sure. No, that's fair. Shifting gears a little bit, I started off the podcast by saying, "Oh, wait, but if you don't identify as a woman, don't leave. It's okay. This is still applicable to you." What is your take on how there can almost be like an allyship for women in business? Because realistically, if we're thinking about these numbers that you've just shared from the McKinsey study, then the likelihood of there being non-female leaders making these decisions is obviously on the majority.
Hmm.
So we do have to rely on non-women to understand the value of this discussion. So what's your take on that? How can we like convey this message to someone that isn't a woman and maybe doesn't see part of the challenges that we're trying to showcase here?
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's a good point. And one of the things that we do talk about often is how men can be kind of that vessel for change, and what they can do. And one opportunity is to find opportunities to mentor women, and really take the time to not only provide the guidance, but also to listen to what their experiences are, to make that change in your company. Also, advocacy is really important, because obviously when we see the percentages of who moves up the ladder, it's more men. So men being advocates for women, understanding, what women are doing, and, speaking their names and bringing them up in rooms that they're not in, and giving them the opportunity to have that visibility. Then, that's really something that men can do. The other thing I would say is, being aware, and looking for that bias, and making sure that you're not being silent, and you are addressing it when you see it.
I work in tech outside of the podcast. So I have essentially what I call two full-time jobs. And tech is known for having a majority of male employees and a minority of women. And obviously, when we think about women of color, that percentage is even smaller. So thinking, along the lines of 20 to 30% of women, let's say, being in the tech industry, at least the last time I looked at statistics, which could, it certainly by the time this episode comes out, that number could be very different. Um, part of that is like, okay, well, how do we make sure that when we have an open position that we have X number of female candidates in that pool? Now, obviously, the next thing that comes up then is, well, you don't want to hire someone just because they're a woman or just because they're X, Y, or Z, but putting in that intention and focus around having the diversity is really like the first step to even enabling it. Because so often when I think of unconscious bias, it's really that you're not necessarily thinking actively around, okay, well, what is going to drive diversity forward? What's going to give me the most comprehensive talent pool possible? Those who are not thinking about their unconscious bias are kind of just moving through the motions. So that would be my first take, I think.
So I know it's not the same as where you were going, but I did have a video, or I was watching a video where there was a woman talking about a her experience or mentoring. She might have been an executive coach of the CEO, and the CEO was mentoring their level below them. When they were mentoring a male, they were mentoring the men that were reporting to them. They were talking about strategy and talking about operations, like how they can impact the business and financially and operationally. Yet when they were talking to the women and mentoring the women that were reporting to them, they were talking about soft skills, like how
Mm-hmm.
to communicate better and how to manage their team. And they the executive coach confronted them about it, and they were completely unaware, and they didn't even know they were doing it. So in terms of like talking about unconscious bias, they're not preparing. He's not preparing those executive VP level employees to move up to a C-suite, whereas the men that he's mentoring, he is preparing to move into those C-suite. So, I think unconscious bias can just even look like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting example. And I can't say I'm surprised. I think it's a very common stigma. It's actually why the majority of HR professionals are women, I think, because there's this misconception that women are better or more adept at, the soft skills or the power skills, as we like to say on this side of the fence. And even beyond that, I mean, something that I talk a lot about on the podcast is that men and women alike, it doesn't matter, have to be able to speak to the business. They have to be able to have a qualitative understanding of what's happening. And you're absolutely right that, that is an example of unconscious bias, because why should it be that the women are so much better at soft skills? Why should it be that the men are so much better at the strategy? Those are all stigmas and might not necessarily be true. There could be women in that group of people who actually are much better at analysis and critical thinking than their male counterparts in that example. So, and vice versa, right? So this is where I think you're absolutely. It's a great example again that, you know as leaders, for all of us, the more we can challenge these stigmas that predicate our experience or are prevalent in business, the better off we all are.
Mhm.
And kind of shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to talk about what you do more specifically. I know I've put you in the hot seat with HR questions, and questions that really pertain a ton to business leaders today. But I know, just in our prior conversations, that you have like an accelerator program, for example, for people moving into leadership roles, that you obviously are super focused on the actual um, provision of these tools and providing mentorship and leadership to women especially. So can you talk through a little bit more what that looks like and why the things that you really focus on and provide these women make it make these tools accessible to them, and why it makes their experience potentially a little bit more well-rounded and comprehensive, so that they can more easily move into those roles when afforded the opportunity?
Yeah. So one of the things that we really like to talk to our community about is the need to have their personal board of advisors. So if I could start there, because I think
Yeah.
that's so important to prepare yourself for every level. I mean, even if you're not looking to be in a leadership position, but you want to grow your career in some way, having that personal board of advisors is just so important. So we talk about one is having that mentor, and two, having an advocate, three, having some kind of a connector on your board that can connect you with people throughout your career, and having your hype squad, and having somebody who is a subject matter expert. So if you have at least one person from each of those categories, then you'll have somebody that can you can go to, and in times of need for those different requirements. But so we really try to focus on providing that one, the mentorship, the hype squad, and that's her hype squad with Bosstrack is we provide that community and that hype squad. And through there we have the connectors, and we can connect people with people that they need throughout their career through that mentorship and through our community, and then also to those subject matter experts. But so back to the mentorship, I mean, the mentorship really is it's one-on-one mentorship. When somebody has they're they're faced with a challenge at work and they don't know how to deal with it, or they just want to get a second opinion, we're there to provide uh, that sounding board. We might not necessarily have the exact answers, but can help you think through those. And we have quite a few women executives in our community. So if one person doesn't have the experience, we have somebody else that can help. And then we have our programs, and you mentioned that Leadership Accelerator program. So we looked at, what are the skills that anybody really needs to move into their leadership role to have high impact and have influence with their team. And we developed a authentic leader model, and we determined, obviously you need to communicate with your team. You need
Mhm.
to um, build trust with your team. Without trust, you know where can you go with your team? You need to have confidence in your own abilities. You need the emotional intelligence, and I could go back to that on when we were talking about men in leadership. And also you need to have that the networking capability to build your network as you move up. And then we also make sure that we focus on introduction to the financial and operational acumen, because I mean, it's not something that should be saved for the
Right.
executive level. I mean,
Yeah.
when you move into a manager role, you have direct impact on the results of the business. So even at that point, you should understand how you're impacting the financial and operational results of the company. So we do provide an introduction to that, and we believe that those areas of are the ones that need people need to at least be aware of and have the tools to be able to move forward in those areas. So one of the things we not only provide um, the leadership training, but we have the year-long mentorship that comes with that afterwards. So in terms of going we were talking about the training programs where you go for a day or two
Hmm.
and you come back, and then you're expected to just figure that out.
Yeah.
Your everything is downloaded and you're like, okay, what do I do? We actually provide that support at longer term to say, okay, what are you facing in your new role, and how can we support you? So
Right.
that's kind of really our focus.
Great. No, it makes sense. I mean, there are so many statistics, I should say, on how people learn and how training is, how effective it can be. And that, basically all these studies show that once, a certain amount of time elapses, all of that information is forgotten. And so
Mhm.
this idea of actually following up and following through and following someone through their journey in their new position, or as they hopefully work toward that new position, it makes sense that that's a part of the magic sauce, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and I'd love to come back to this notion of emotional intelligence. It is a topic that's obviously very important. Not everyone has high emotional intelligence, which is okay. But what were you thinking of sharing on that front?
Oh, yeah. So we had switched topics, but and I don't mean to go back, but when we were talking about that example of the executive providing the soft skill opportunities to the women and the strategy to the men, really it's they're not doing the men any favors because I mean studies have shown that people with high emotional intelligence do better in executive positions overall. So um, yeah, I mean those men should be receiving, and I mean I know soft skills are not emotional intelligence, but emotional intelligence is kind of layered into that, and it isn't the case that you're either born with emotional intelligence or that you either have it or you don't. You can actually
Mm-hmm.
learn emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be a training opportunity for men. So they're being. I was just thinking they're kind of being shortchanged a little bit by not getting that opportunity.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. The stigmas that surround genders and generations and ages and all of these things really can significantly negatively impact people in the workforce and in the workplace. And I think, like, one final question that I have for you is really around like what we can say to the listeners today to get mentorship and leadership training to be a bigger priority in 2024. What are some initial steps that the listeners can take, whether they're decision makers or not, because they don't have to be decision makers in order to influence the direction of their company? Everyone has a voice. What are some initial things that they can do? What are some maybe bigger blue sky initiatives that they could aspire to have that also kind of bookend your advice there?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I hear people talking about, my guests talk about on my podcast, is there are companies that have mentorship programs, and having those mentorship programs, I think, is really helpful. I mean, I think it's a first step because I believe you should have mentors outside of your company as well to have because you're
Mhm.
seeing, very tunnel vision when you're talking to somebody within the organization only. But I think it's a really good start for companies to start mentorship programs. And I don't know. I really don't know the statistics. You might know more from being in HR, but I don't think there are a lot of majority of companies don't have that. And also, I mean, I think having a formalized advocacy program included in that mentorship, and at least providing that training of what that could look like, and so that people are aware that it's something that they should be thinking about doing, because I think that's really the if it's not something that they're focused on, you can so easily get pulled away in different things with business. And I think it just needs to be a reminder in some ways. So I think having that training is important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And you're absolutely right that most companies do not have formalized mentorship programs. And there is a huge opportunity there.
Yeah.
There's room for growth and opportunity and all of the good things that can come out of creating programs that really invest or focus on investing in people generally and just, you know, period. I guess
Yeah.
that's the statement, right? Um, that said, Michelle, I really appreciate that you've joined the podcast this week and that you highlighted some really important initiatives that you all are doing at Bosstrack and what listeners could potentially expect if they tune into your podcast. So, with that, tell everyone where they can connect with you, where they could listen to Her Hype Squad, your podcast with Bosstrack, and where they could potentially connect on get bringing these types of programs to their organizations through what you do.
Yeah, well, a couple of different ways. Thank you for asking. One is obviously going to the website. It's www.thebosstrack.com. And there you'll find all of our courses and our programs. And we are NASBA registered, and we are approved partners of SHRM and HRCI. So we have, there's always that benefit as well. For the podcast, it's Her Hype Squad with Bosstrack, and we are everywhere you find podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it, on YouTube as well. And yeah, I mean, you can always find me on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn handle is Meet Michelle Harris. So if you, I'm sure there are tons of Michelle Harrises, but if you use Meet Michelle Harris, you'll find me. And
Amazing.
I'd love to chat. You know, I'm always there.
There you go. Invitation to chat for everyone
Yes.
listening. And all of those links will be available in the show notes as well. So the listeners can easily get connected with you, with Bosstrack, with Her Hype Squad, and listen to your episode. So thank you so much again for your time, and really appreciate all of the insights.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.